The morning they seized my American flag was the morning I discovered the HOA president had been embezzling $300,000 from our community fund. At 6:47 a.m., security cameras caught Margaret Sinclair personally ripping down Old Glory from my porch while her husband spray-painted violation across my driveway in neon orange. She had no idea that hidden microphone in my pocket was broadcasting her confession live to every home's emergency PA system. By the time police sirens filled our gated community 30 minutes later, Margaret's 20-year reign of terror was about to spectacularly implode. My name is Nathan Cross, and I'm a disabled Marine veteran who moved to Willowbrook Estates in suburban Atlanta, thinking I'd found my slice of the American dream. 3 bedrooms, 2-car garage, community pool where my daughter Emma could swim everything a single dad could want after surviving 2 tours in Afghanistan. The HOA seemed reasonable at first. Just standard stuff about keeping lawns neat and not parking RVs on the street. Then Margaret Sinclair became president. Picture this, 60, 2 years old, bottle blonde hair lacquered into a helmet, driving a pearl-white Mercedes that cost more than most people's annual salary. She ran Willowbrook's HOA like her personal kingdom, surrounded by a board of sycophants who rubber-stamped her every whim. Her husband Ronald was the community's contracted landscaper detail that should have raised red flags, but somehow never got questioned. The harassment started small. A warning letter about my grass being half an inch too tall, delivered at 6 a.m. on a Saturday. Then complaints about my truck's military veteran license plate frame being non-standard. Each violation came with escalating fines, $25, $50, $100. All payable to Willowbrook Management Service as a company I'd later discover was registered to Margaret's maiden name, Mr. Cross. Margaret said during my first HOA meeting attendance, her voice dripping with false sweetness like poisoned honey. We have standards here at Willowbrook. Perhaps you'd be more comfortable in a less regulated community? The way she paused before less regulated made it clear what she really meant. I wasn't their kind of people. My Purple Heart and combat scars didn't matter. My prompt mortgage payment didn't matter. What mattered was that I drove a 5-year-old F-150 instead of a luxury sedan, and my daughter went to public school instead of Whitfield Academy. The flag incident was my breaking point. I'd installed a proper flagpole, followed every county ordinance, even got written approval from the previous HOA board. But Margaret claimed the approval was invalid because it hadn't been notarized in triplicate. At dawn on Memorial Day, she personally supervised its removal. Federal law protects displaying the American flag. I told her as she directed 2 maintenance workers to dig up my flagpole. Federal law doesn't supersede private community contracts. She smirked, waving a thickness of legal documents. Section 12, Sen. 5, clearly states all exterior modifications require current board approval. Your approval expired when the new board took office. That's when I started recording everything. What most people don't know is that one-party consent states like Georgia allow you to record conversations you're part of without informing the other party. My buddy Jake from the Corps ran a security company and hooked me up with gear so sophisticated it would make the NSA jealous. Microphones in my shirt buttons, cameras smaller than pencil erasers. Everything uploading to encrypted cloud storage in real time. The evidence I collected over 3 months painted a picture of corruption that would make a mob boss blush. Margaret was running what I called the Willowbrook Shakedown. Selective enforcement was her weapon of choice. The Indian family in 4B got fined $500 for Diwali decorations, staying up one day past the holiday period. The black couple in 7C received violation notices for parking their car facing the wrong direction in their own driveway. Meanwhile, Margaret's friends could leave Christmas lights up until Easter, park boats on their lawns, and host parties until 3 a.m. without consequence. But the financial crimes were where Margaret truly excelled. Every vendor contract went to companies connected to board members. Ronald's landscaping company charged 40% above market rate. The pool maintenance company belonged to Treasurer Janet Walsh's brother-in-law. Security services were provided by Vice President Tom Bradley's nephew at triple the normal cost. It's called fiduciary duty. Margaret, I said during one board meeting, standing up with documentation in hand, You can't award contracts to family members without competitive bidding. Sit down, Mr. Cross, or I'll have security escort you out. She replied, her face flushing beneath layers of foundation. The board has already voted. Discussion closed. Security was a 300-pound former mall cop named Dennis, who spent most shifts sleeping in his golf cart. I sat down, but not before making eye contact with 3 other homeowners who'd been victims of Margaret's selective enforcement. The revolution was brewing. The equipment room incident happened on a Tuesday. I'd been storing my daughter's bike in the community equipment room amenity explicitly included in our HOA fees. When I went to retrieve it for Emma's birthday ride, I found the door pad code changed and my access revoked. Oh, board decision, Dennis mumbled, not looking up from his phone. Talk to Mrs. St. Clair. Margaret's office was in the clubhouse. A temple to beige furniture and fake plants that smelled like air freshener and broken dreams. She kept me waiting 45 minutes while she was in an important call. I could see her through the glass playing solitaire on her computer. The equipment room is for community equipment only, she finally explained, sliding a fresh violation notice across her desk. Personal items require a monthly storage fee. Retroactive. For the past 6 months, you've been illegally using community space. How much? $50 per month. That's $300 you owe, plus a $100 processing fee. I laughed. Actually laughed. Margaret, that room has 30 bikes in it. You planning to charge everyone? Her smile could have frozen hell. Only those in violation of community standards. That night, I sent an anonymous tip to Channel 11's investigative unit about discriminatory enforcement at Willowbrook Estates. Reporter Keisha Williams was very interested in a story about HOA corruption targeting veterans and minorities. But I needed more evidence, something undeniable. The towing incident gave me exactly that. Thursday morning, 5:47 a.m. I woke to the sound of a diesel engine and the beep, beep, beep of a truck backing up. Through my bedroom window, I watched a tow truck hooking up to my F-150, which was legally parked in my own driveway. I grabbed my phone, started recording, and ran outside in boxers and bare feet. Hey, that's my truck. The driver, a skinny kid who looked barely 18, wouldn't make eye contact. HOA ordered it. Man, something about expired registration. My registration's valid until December comp. I showed him the sticker on my plate. Then noticed something interesting. The tow truck's logo. Sinclair Automotive Services. St. Clair. Any relation to Margaret? The kid's face went white. I just do what they tell me. Sire. Who's they? Who specifically ordered this tow? I gotta go. He started lowering my truck. Suddenly, very eager to leave. That's when Margaret appeared, strutting across my lawn in a velour tracksuit and house slippers, waving papers like battle flags. Mr. Cross, that vehicle is in violation of HOA Statute 7. R.1. All vehicles must be parked facing outward for emergency evacuation purposes. My driveway faces the street. Margaret, there's only one way to park. The statute is clear. Vehicles must face outward relative to the home's primary entrance. She smiled triumphantly. Your front door faces east? Your vehicle faces west. Violation. I kept recording as she explained this pretzel logic, capturing every word of her, admitting she'd ordered the tow at 5 a.m. to minimize disruption to other residents. The kid had unhooked my truck and fled, probably realizing he'd stumbled into something above his pay grade. Tell me. Margaret, I said, keeping my voice calm for the recording. How many other driveways have you checked for this? Creative interpretation of the rules? That's not your concern. It is when you're targeting specific residents. That's discrimination, which violates federal fair housing laws. Her face went from smug to furious in 2 seconds flat. Are you threatening me? Mr. Cross, I'm informing you of federal law. There's a difference. She stepped closer, lowering her voice, but not enough for my microphone to miss it. You have no idea who you're dealing with. I've been running this community for 20 years. I've destroyed bigger men than you. Keep pushing. And I'll make your life so miserable you'll beg to sell. And guess what? My investment group will buy your house for 60 cents on the dollar. Just like we did with the Patels and the Washingtons. There it was. The admission I'd been waiting for, but Margaret wasn't done. Power drunk on 2 decades of unchecked authority. She kept talking. You think you're special because you played soldier? This is my battlefield. And I never lose. By next month, you'll have so many violations and fines that the bank will foreclose. Then you can take your trashy truck and your public school daughter back to whatever trailer park you crawled out of. I smiled. Thank you for clarifying your position. Margaret. She must have sensed something in my tone because her eyes narrowed. What are you smiling about? Just appreciating the transparency. Have a nice day. I went inside, uploaded the recording to multiple cloud services, and made several copies on USB drives. Then I called Jake. Remember that equipment we talked about? I said. I need the full package. And call your cousin at the FBI. This is bigger than just HOA harassment. The Grass Height campaign started the next day, every morning, at 6 a.m. Ronald Sinclair personally measured my grass with a ruler, photographing any blade over 3 inches. The violations poured in $50 per day for neglected landscaping. Even though my lawn looked better than most golf courses, I responded by installing security cameras covering every inch of my property, all clearly visible and legal. Then I posted signs. Smile, you're on camera. All video is live-streamed and archived off-site. Margaret's next move was diabolical. She scheduled mandatory HOA meetings at 2 p.m. on weekdays, when working people couldn't attend. Then she'd pass new regulations targeting specific residents who weren't there to object. No pickup trucks visible from the street. No children's toys in front yards after sunset. No outdoor cooking except between approved hours. But she made a crucial mistake. The meeting where she discussed using HOA funds for a community beautification project that would primarily benefit her own street. I'd given tiny cameras to 5 trusted neighbors who could attend. What they captured was Margaret proposing to spend $90,000 repaving her cul-de-sac, while streets with minority families were told there was no budget for road repairs. Tom Bradley made the mistake of asking, "Shouldn't we prioritize based on actual road condition?" Margaret's response was caught in beautiful 4K clarity. "Tom, you need to remember who runs this board. Play ball. Or I'll audit your pool installation from 3 years ago. I'm sure we can find some violations worth $20,000–30,000 in fines." That night, I compiled everything. 3 months of recordings, documents, and witness statements, evidence of embezzlement through inflated vendor contracts, discriminatory enforcement targeting minorities and veterans, extortion using HOA fines as weapons, conspiracy to force homeowners into foreclosure, racketeering that would make RICO prosecutors salivate. I created packages for the FBI, State Attorney General, Fair Housing Administration, and local media. But I wanted Margaret's final confession to be public, undeniable, and witnessed by the entire community. The Memorial Day community barbecue was perfect. May 27th, 1 p.m., hundreds of residents gathered around the clubhouse pool, kids splashing while adults manned grills and picnic tables. Margaret held court near the main pavilion, surrounded by her bored cronies, basking in their little kingdom. I wore my marine dress blues regulation perfect, medals gleaming in the Georgia sun. Emma walked beside me in her Sunday best, carrying a small American flag. We looked like the all-American family Margaret claimed didn't belong in Willowbrook. "Margaret," I called out, loud enough for everyone to hear. "I'd like to discuss the flag situation." She turned, her smile faltering at my formal appearance. The conversations around us quieted as people sensed confrontation brewing. "This is hardly the time or place, Mr. Cross. On the contrary, Memorial Day seems perfect for discussing why you personally tore down my American flag." Phones came out. People started recording. Margaret's face cycled through emotions like a slot machine. "That flag was in violation of rules you invented specifically to target me, just like the Grass Height citations, the towing attempt, and threatening to audit Tom's pool." Tom Bradley's head snapped up at that. Other board members shifted uncomfortably. Margaret stepped closer, lowering her voice. "You need to stop this right now. Or what? You'll destroy me like you did the Patels? Force me into foreclosure so your investment group can buy my house for 60 cents on the dollar? Gasps rippled through the crowd. Someone whispered, "Is he wearing a wire?" Margaret grabbed my arm, hissing in my ear, "You're done. By tomorrow. I'll have so many violations on your property that—" "Is that a threat?" "Margaret, it's a promise. I've got $300,000 in legal funds to bury you. You think your little recordings matter? My lawyers will." She stopped mid-sentence, her face draining of color as she realized what she'd just said. $300,000? I asked loudly. From the HOA legal fund? The one that's supposed to have 50,000 max according to last month's financial report? The crowd pressed closer. Board members were backing away from Margaret like she was radioactive. I misspoke. Margaret stammered. You meant the money you've been siphoning through fake vendor contracts? Ronald's landscaping markup? Janet's brother's pool service? Tom's nephew's security company charging triple market rate? Each name landed like a punch. Ronald Sinclair was already heading for the parking lot. Janet Walsh was crying. Tom Bradley looked like he might foam it. Margaret rallied for one last attack. "You're a paranoid conspiracy theorist, a disgruntled troublemaker who—" That's when Jake gave the signal. The emergency PA system crackled to life across all of Willowbrook Estates. Every pool speaker, every tennis court announcement system, every security booth radio suddenly broadcast Margaret's greatest hits. "I've destroyed bigger men than you. My investment group will buy your house for 60 cents on the dollar. You can take your trashy truck and your public school daughter back to whatever trailer park, play ball, or I'll audit your pool installation. I've got $300,000 in legal funds to bury you." The recordings echoed across the community, Margaret's own voice condemning her from a dozen speakers. Parents covered children's ears at the trailer park comment. The Indian family from 4B and the black couple from 7C stood together, finally understanding why they'd been targeted. Margaret ran in her designer sandals, stumbling toward the clubhouse as hundreds of phones recorded her retreat. But she didn't make it to the door, because that's when the police arrived. 3 squad cars, no sirens but lights flashing, pulled into the clubhouse parking lot. Detective Michelle Rodriguez stepped out, followed by 2 FBI agents in dark suits, despite the Georgia heat. "Margaret Sinclair?" Detective Rodriguez called out. Margaret froze on the clubhouse steps, one hand on the door handle, her kingdom crumbling around her. "We have a warrant for your arrest on charges of embezzlement, extortion, and violation of federal fair housing laws." The crowd exploded. Cheers. Gasps. Crying. 20 years of pent-up frustration released in a moment. I felt Emma's hand squeeze mine as we watched justice arrive in real time. But Margaret wasn't going quietly. As Detective Rodriguez approached with handcuffs, Margaret screamed, "This is entrapment. That man Nathan Krosh set me up. He's been recording illegally. Ma'am." "Georgia is a one-party consent state," Rodriguez said calmly, "and Mr. Cross filed proper whistleblower documentation with multiple agencies. You have the right to remain silent." As they led Margaret away, she locked eyes with me one last time. The hatred there could have melted steel, but underneath was something else. Fear. Real. Bone-deep fear of someone who'd built an empire on intimidation finally facing consequences. That's when Ronald Sinclair made his move. Margaret's husband had circled back through the maintenance gate, and I saw him heading for the clubhouse office where all the financial records were kept. "Jake?" I said quietly. "Office." Now, my buddy moved like the Marine he was, intercepting Ronald just as he reached for the door with a can of lighter fluid in his hand. The FBI agents were very interested in that. As sirens wailed and more law enforcement arrived, I stood with my daughter by the pool, still wearing my dress blues, still holding her hand. Around us, neighbors were sharing stories, comparing violations, realizing how deep the corruption went. "Daddy," Emma asked, "why did Mrs. Sinclair hate our flag so much?" I knelt down to her level. It wasn't really about the flag. "Sweetheart, some people use rules as weapons to hurt others. The flag just reminded her that I wouldn't back down." "Is that why you wore your uniform today?" "Partly, but mostly to remind everyone what that flag really stands for. Justice, equality, standing up to bullies even when they think they own everything." Channel 11's news van screeched into the parking lot. Keisha Williams jumping out with her cameraman. The story was about to go wide. And Willowbrook Estates would never be the same. But as I watched federal agents carrying boxes of evidence from the clubhouse, I knew this was just the beginning. Margaret's investment group had tentacles throughout the suburbs. The $300,000 was just what she'd stolen from our HOA. Tom Bradley approached nervously, sweat staining his polo shirt. Nathan, I didn't know how deep this went. I swear. She threatened me. And save it for the FBI. Tom, but if you really want to help, you'll testify about every dirty deal you witnessed. He nodded frantically. There's more. So much more. Other communities. Other boards. Margaret was building a network. A hand fell on Tom's shoulder. FBI Special Agent Sarah Chen. According to her badge, Mr. Bradley, we need to talk. Now, as they led Tom away, Detective Rodriguez approached me. Mr. Cross, we're going to need all your recordings and documentation. This is shaping up to be one of the biggest HOA fraud cases in Georgia history. Already uploaded to the secure server your office provided? I said, passwords in the sealed envelope I gave Agent Chen an hour ago. Rodriguez smiled. You know, most people would have just moved away. I'm a Marine. Detective, we don't retreat. We adapt and overcome. Well, you certainly did that. Margaret Sinclair's going away for a long time. But I should warn you, she was interrupted by a commotion near the parking lot. A convoy of luxury cars was arriving, and angry residents from neighboring communities were streaming onto the property. Word had spread fast about Margaret's arrest, and everyone wanted answers about their own HOAs. This is about to get complicated. Rodriguez finished, but I was already spotting familiar faces in the crowd. The Washingtons, who'd been forced out 6 months ago. The Patels, who'd lost their home to foreclosure after mysterious fines. All of Margaret's victims, returning to demand justice. That's when my phone buzzed. Unknown number, but I recognized the area code. Washington, D.C. Mr. Cross? This is Director Harrison with the Federal Housing Administration. We've been monitoring the situation in Willowbrook. How would you feel about testifying before Congress about HOA abuse? I looked around at my neighbors, some crying, some cheering, all finally free from Margaret's reign of terror. Emma tugged on my sleeve, pointing at someone raising an American flag over the clubhouse. Director Harrison, I said, I'll testify anywhere you need me. But first, I need to help my community heal. Understood. We'll be in touch. And Mr. Cross, thank you for your service. Again, as I hung up, more sirens approached. The postal inspector had arrived apparently. Margaret had been using mail fraud too. Behind them, I could see news vans from 3 more stations racing down Willow Lane. The revolution had begun, and it started with a veteran who refused to let a tyrant tear down his flag. But in the distance, through the chaos of arrests and interviews and liberated neighbors, I saw something that chilled my blood. A black town car with tinted windows. Watching from across the street, the license plate was from Delaware, the corporate secrecy capital of America. Margaret's investment group was watching. And they weren't happy about losing their prize money launderer. The real war was just beginning. The Blacktown car didn't leave for 3 days. It sat across from my house like a predator waiting for its prey to make a mistake. An engine occasionally running to keep the air conditioning going in the brutal Georgia heat. By the 4th day, 2 more identical vehicles had joined it, forming a subtle but unmistakable message. Margaret Sinclair might be in federal custody. But her backers weren't going anywhere. Daddy? Why are those cars watching us? Emma asked over breakfast, her Cheerios getting soggy as she stared out the kitchen window. Just people interested in what happened with Mrs. Sinclair? I said, keeping my voice light. Nothing to worry about. But I was worried. The FBI had Margaret, but they'd only scratched the surface of something much bigger. The $300,000 she'd embezzled from Willowbrook was pocket change compared to what Agent Chen had uncovered in the first week of investigation. Nathan, we need to talk. Jake's voice crackled through my phone as I dropped Emma at summer camp. Remember that investment group Margaret mentioned? They're called Paramount Equity Solutions. Shell company, registered in Delaware, but the real money traces back to, not on the phone. I interrupted. Maria's Cafe. 20 minutes. Maria's was a tiny Cuban place, 2 towns over. Run by an elderly couple who barely spoke English and definitely didn't have security cameras. Jake was already there when I arrived. Laptop open. Surrounded by printouts that looked like corporate structure diagrams designed by a spider on methamphetamine. Paramount Equity Solutions is just one tentacle, Jake explained. His special forces training, evident in how he'd positioned himself to watch both entrances. They're running the same playbook in 17 states. Install corrupt HOA boards. Use selective enforcement to force out homeowners. Buy properties at foreclosure for pennies on the dollar. How much money are we talking about? Conservative estimate? $400 million in real estate acquired through HOA harassment over the past decade? But here's the kicker guess. Who's on their board of advisors? He slid a photo across the table. My coffee mug froze halfway to my lips. State Senator William Garrison. The same politician who'd been pushing to reduce HOA oversight and expand their enforcement powers. The same one who'd received massive campaign donations from concerned homeowner groups that, I now realized, were probably Paramount front organizations. This is RICO territory. I muttered. It's worse than that. Jake pulled up another document. Remember those families Margaret forced out? The Washingtons? The Patels? The Wins? They weren't random targets. Paramount has a algorithm. They actually call it the Neighborhood Optimization Protocol. It identifies specific demographics to target based on likelihood of fighting back, access to legal resources, and potential property value increase after removal. They're using data analysis for ethnic cleansing. I said, the words tasting like ash, the 21st century version, all hidden behind HOA rules and legal procedures. My phone buzzed. Detective Rodriguez, Cross. Where are you? Those town cars just left your street moving fast toward I-85. Jake was already packing up. We made it back to Willowbrook in 15 minutes. Finding my house surrounded by FBI vehicles and local police, the front door stood open, splintered at the frame. They were professionals. Agent Chen explained as we surveyed the damage. In and out in under 6 minutes. Neighbor's camera caught them, but plates were fake and faces covered. My house had been ransacked with surgical precision. They'd ignored the television, Emma's iPad, even the cash in my desk drawer, but my computer was gone, along with every external drive and the fireproof safe where I'd kept backup recordings. Good thing I uploaded everything to multiple cloud servers. I said. Chen nodded. We expected this. What we didn't expect was this. She handed me an evidence bag containing a single sheet of expensive stationery. The message was typed, not handwritten. Mr. Cross, your military service taught you about acceptable losses. Consider this your only warning. Testify before Congress, and your daughter learns the same lesson. Patriots know when to stand down. Concerned citizens for community standards. My hands shook, but not from fear. Pure rage flooded through me. The kind I hadn't felt since Afghanistan, when insurgents targeted civilian schools. They just threatened Emma. I said quietly, "We're putting you both in protective custody immediately." Chen said, "No." The word came out harder than I intended. They want me to run. To hide. That's not happening. Nathan. These aren't suburban bullies anymore. Paramount has connections to, I don't care if they have connections to God himself. They threatened my daughter. That night, I called in favors from every veteran I knew. By morning, Emma had more protection than a presidential candidate. Former SEALs, Rangers, and Force Recon Marines materialized around Willowbrook like ghosts. Big Mike from Delta Force became her summer camp counselor. Tony, a sniper who could thread needles at 1,000 yards, took up residence in the foreclosed house with perfect sightlines to mine. The town cars returned within 48 hours. But now they had company. Every time one of Paramount's vehicles appeared, 2 or 3 pickup trucks with veteran stickers would coincidentally park nearby. Nobody said anything. Nobody made threats. But the message was clear. You're not the only ones who can play intimidation games. Meanwhile, The investigation exploded across state lines. Rodriguez called with daily updates, each more incredible than the last. Nathan, you opened Pandora's box. We found the same pattern in Florida, Texas, Arizona, Nevada. Anywhere with large HOA presence and rapid property appreciation, the DOJ is forming a task force. The media attention intensified. Keisha Williams from Channel 11 won an Emmy for her exposé on Willowbrook, then immediately started a documentary series exploring HOA corruption nationwide. My phone rang constantly with reporters, homeowners, and attorneys seeking advice. But the real breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Tom Bradley, the former board member, had flipped completely, desperate to avoid prison time. What he revealed in his deposition made everything else look like jaywalking. Margaret wasn't just stealing HOA funds. Tom testified, his words captured on court video I later reviewed. She was beta testing. Paramount needed proof. Their system worked before rolling it out nationally. Willowbrook was their laboratory. He produced emails, recorded conversations, and financial documents showing how Paramount had recruited Margaret 20 years ago, trained her in their methods, and promised her 10% of all property acquired through her efforts. They have a training center. Tom continued, sweating through his dress shirt despite the air conditioning. Outside Jacksonville. They call it the Leadership Institute, but it's really a school for corruption. HOA board members from across the country go there to learn harassment techniques, legal loopholes, and psychological manipulation. The investigation revealed 73 HOA presidents had graduated from Paramount's program, each returned to their communities with the same playbook: selective enforcement, escalating fines, strategic foreclosures, and always targeting minorities and veterans first. Why veterans? The prosecutor asked. Because they fight back. Tom replied, Paramount learned early that veterans organize, resist, and inspire others. Take them out first, and the rest of the community falls in line. 3 weeks after Margaret's arrest, I received an encrypted email from someone claiming to be a Paramount insider. They wanted to meet, promising information that would burn the whole thing down. Against Chen's objections and Jake's tactical advice, I agreed. The meeting was set for a Waffle House off I-285 at 2 a.m., public enough to discourage violence, private enough for sensitive conversation. She was younger than I expected, maybe 35, wearing a business suit that looked slept in. Her hands shook as she slid a flash drive across the syrup-sticky table. My name is Dr. Sarah Winters. I designed the neighborhood optimization protocol. I kept my expression neutral, despite wanting to leap across the table. This woman had created the algorithm that destroyed hundreds of families. I thought I was creating community improvement software, she continued, her voice barely above a whisper, identifying problem properties, helping maintain standards. I didn't know they'd weaponize it for ethnic cleansing. Ignorance isn't. I know, she cut me off, tears streaming down her face. I know what I enabled. That's why I'm here. That drive contains everything's source code, deployment records, victim lists, financial flows, and names, every politician they've bought, every judge they've influenced, every sheriff who's looked the other way. Why now? Because they're going after kids now. The new protocol update includes school performance data. They're planning to target families with special needs children, claiming they decrease property values. I have an autistic son. I couldn't be part of that. I pocketed the drive. You know they'll come after you. I'm leaving the country tomorrow. New identity. New life. But first, I needed someone who'd actually use this information. She stood to leave. Then paused. Mr. Cross, that algorithm I created, it flagged you as highest priority target in Georgia. Not because of your property value, but because their psychological profile said you'd never stop fighting. They were right. She disappeared into the night. I never saw her again. But her flash drive changed everything. The data was a prosecutor's dream, emails explicitly discussing racial targeting, financial records showing bribes to state officials, an actual manual titled Aggressive Property Acquisition Through HOA Enforcement that read like a guide to legal ethnic cleansing. Most damning was a recorded conference call from 6 months earlier. Senator Garrison's voice was unmistakable. Phase 3 begins next year. With the new legislation removing HOA oversight, we can accelerate acquisitions by 70%. Focus on veteran-heavy communities. First, they're the biggest obstacles to neighborhood optimization. The FBI raid on Paramount's headquarters looked like something from a movie. 17 simultaneous raids across 6 states. All streamed live. Because someone accidentally tipped off the media, agents carried out boxes of evidence, while executives were led away in handcuffs, their lawyers scrambling like roaches when the lights come on. Senator Garrison's arrest happened on the Senate floor. C-SPAN caught every second, as FBI agents waited respectfully for him to finish his speech about protecting community values before taking him into custody. The irony was delicious. But Paramount had one last card to play. The attack came at 3 a.m. on a Tuesday. Not physical, they were too smart for that with my house surrounded by veterans. Instead, they went digital. Emma's school records were leaked online with our home address. My military service records appeared on dark websites. Fake social media accounts spread stories about my mental instability and violent tendencies. Then came the deepfake videos. Me threatening Margaret. Me at a militant rally I'd never attended. Me saying horrible things about minorities that made my stomach turn. The technology was so good that even I almost believed them. They're trying to discredit you before the congressional hearing. Jen explained. Make you look like an unstable veteran with a grudge rather than a whistleblower. The hearing was scheduled for the following Monday. 5 days to salvage my reputation and ensure my testimony would be believed. That's when the cavalry arrived in force. Maria Santos from the diner started a social media campaign, I Stand With Nathan. Within hours, thousands of HOA abuse victims shared their stories. The Patels posted videos of what really happened to them. The Washingtons revealed recordings of Margaret's threats. The Nuans showed documents proving they'd been targeted for their nationality. Veterans organizations mobilized. The American Legion, VFW, and dozens of smaller groups issued statements supporting me. My unit from Afghanistan created a video testimonial about my character that went viral overnight. But the most powerful response came from Emma's second-grade class. Her teacher, Mrs. Rodriguez, helped the kids make a video titled, Mr. Cross is Our Hero. 27 7-year-olds, explaining how I'd helped with school projects, coached Little League, and always had time to help. Emma's part made me cry. My daddy says bullies win when good people stay quiet. He's not quiet. That's why the bullies are mad at him. By Thursday, the deepfakes had been thoroughly debunked by technical experts. The social media campaigns had backfired spectacularly, generating more support for HOA reform than years of lobbying could have achieved. Paramount's last desperate gambit had only strengthened our position. The night before the hearing, I couldn't sleep. I sat on my porch, surrounded by brothers in arms who'd appointed themselves my security detail, watching the same stars I'd stared at in Afghanistan. Tomorrow would determine whether Margaret's arrest was just an isolated victory or the beginning of real change. You ready for this? Jake asked, handing me a coffee. I've testified before Congress about combat operations. This can't be worse than explaining why a mission went sideways. This is different. You're taking on people with real power. Paramount's investors include, I know who they include, pharmaceutical companies using HOAs to force out group homes for recovering addicts, defense contractors who didn't want veterans with PTSD in their executives' neighborhoods, tech billionaires who saw diverse communities as inefficient land use, and you're still going through with it? I looked at him like he'd asked if water was wet. They threatened Emma. They destroyed hundreds of families. They turned the American dream into a weapon against Americans. Hell yes, I'm going through with it. Monday morning arrived gray and humid. Washington's weather matching the mood. The Senate hearing room was packed beyond capacity. Media from around the world. HOA victims from dozens of states. And in the back, trying to blend in, as representatives from Paramount's remaining leadership, Senator Patricia Hughes, chair of the Housing Committee, and thankfully not on Paramount's payroll, called the hearing to order. Mr. Cross, you've submitted extensive evidence of systematic discrimination, financial fraud, and civil rights violations perpetrated through HOA governance structures. Please tell us, in your own words, what happened in Willowbrook Estates. I leaned into the microphone, thinking of every family forced from their homes, every veteran told their service meant nothing, every child who'd watched their parents humiliated by petty tyrants. Senator, what happened in Willowbrook wasn't just about one corrupt HOA president. It was about a nationwide conspiracy to weaponize community associations against American citizens. Margaret Sinclair was just a foot soldier in a war most people didn't know was being fought. For the next 3 hours, I laid out everything: the selective enforcement, the neighborhood optimization protocol, the training centers, the political connections. I played recordings, showed documents, and named names. Every time Paramount's lawyers objected, I had evidence to counter. The committee's questions were sharp but fair. Senator Hughes seemed particularly interested in the algorithmic discrimination. Mr. Cross, are you saying there's actual software designed to identify and target specific ethnic groups for HOA harassment? Not just ethnic groups. Senator, veterans, disabled individuals, single parent, elderly residents on fixed incomes, anyone the algorithm determined couldn't fight back effectively or would generate maximum property value increase through forced removal. I clicked to the next slide, showing code from Dr. Sess. Winter's flash drive. This specific function assigns risk scores to homeowners. Higher scores mean more aggressive enforcement. Veterans automatically receive 40 extra points. Minorities receive 30. Families with special needs children receive 50. The comments in the code literally call it optimizing for displacement potential. Gasps rippled through the room. One Paramount lawyer actually fainted. The testimony continued with other witnesses. The Patels explained how they'd been fined into bankruptcy. Maria Santos revealed how Margaret had tried to force her to sell her diner. Tom Bradley, granted immunity, detailed the corruption from inside. But the most powerful testimony came from Dr. Patricia Kim, a civil rights historian who put everything in context. What we're seeing is the privatization of discrimination. She explained, when federal law made housing discrimination illegal, bad actors found a workaround. HOAs operate in a legal gray area where constitutional protections are murky. Paramount weaponized this ambiguity to create what amounts to corporate-sponsored ethnic cleansing, all while maintaining plausible deniability through bureaucratic processes. The hearing stretched into the evening. By the time Senator Hughes called for closing statements, the case against Paramount was overwhelming. But I knew evidence wasn't enough. Politics required more than facts. Senators, I began my closing statement. I served 2 tours in Afghanistan defending American values. I've seen what happens when communities turn against each other. When power goes unchecked, when good people stay silent. I came home to build a life for my daughter in a country where justice matters, where bullies don't win just because they have expensive lawyers and political connections. Paramount Equity Solutions and HOAs like Willowbrook aren't just stealing money or property. They're stealing the American dream itself, turning neighbor against neighbor, making our communities into battlegrounds where only the wealthy and connected survive. Margaret Sinclair is in federal prison. Senator Garrison is facing trial. Paramount's executives are under indictment. But unless we change the system that allowed this to happen, there will be other Margarets, other Paramounts, other families destroyed by those who see our homes, not as communities but as commodities. I'm not asking for sympathy. I'm asking for justice. Not just for me or my daughter, but for every family who's ever been told their grass was too long, their flag was too proud, or their presence was too inconvenient for someone's property values. We can do better. We must do better. Because if we don't, then everything I fought for overseas, everything our communities should represent, becomes just another asset for exploitation. The room erupted in applause, despite the chair's attempts to maintain order. Emma, watching from the gallery with Jake, waved a small American flag, the same one Margaret had tried to ban. 3 months later, the Homeowner Protection Act passed with bipartisan support. It established federal oversight of HOAs, banned algorithmic discrimination, and created severe penalties for selective enforcement. Margaret Sinclair was sentenced to 15 years in federal prison. Senator Garrison got 20. Paramount Equity Solutions was dissolved, its assets distributed to victims, but the real victory was smaller, more personal. On a sunny Saturday morning, I stood in my front yard at Willowbrook Estates, now under new management, elected by residents who'd learned the importance of participation. Emma helped me install a new flagpole-reinforced concrete base, commercial-grade hardware, completely up to code. As we raised the American flag together, neighbors gathered. The Washingtons had moved back, their foreclosure reversed. The new ones flew their Vietnamese heritage flag alongside Old Glory. The new Indian family in 4B was setting up for a Diwali celebration without fear of fines. "Daddy," Emma asked, "do you think there are more bad hoes out there?" "Probably. Sweetheart, bad people don't just give up because they lost once, so what do we do?" I looked at my daughter, thinking of all the fights still to come, all the families still suffering under petty tyrants with clipboards and measuring tapes. We keep fighting. We help others stand up. And we never, ever let them take down our flag. The flag snapped in the breeze, bright against the Georgia sky. Somewhere, another HOA board was probably plotting against residents who didn't fit their vision. But now those residents had precedent, had laws, had hope. And sometimes, that's all the ammunition you need to win a war. Margaret Sinclair thought she could destroy me with HOA violations and measuring tapes. Instead, she started a revolution that brought down a multi-million-dollar conspiracy. All because she made one crucial mistake. She went after a Marines flag. The documentary filmmaker contacted me on the 5th anniversary of Margaret's arrest, Ashley Kim. David's sister, who'd filmed that fateful HOA meeting, had won an Academy Award for her film, The Willowbrook War. Now she wanted to do a follow-up, exploring what had changed and what hadn't. People need to see that the fight didn't end with one victory. Ashley explained over coffee at Maria's Diner, which had become something of a pilgrimage site for HOA reform activists. They need to know what real change looks like. I agreed to participate, partly because the story needed updating, but mostly because of the email I'd received that morning. "Mr. Cross, my name is Jennifer Martinez. I'm a nurse in Phoenix, and our HOA is trying to force me out for having a home healthcare business. I saw your documentary. Can you help, please? I'm Disparity." It was the 4th such request that week. Despite federal reforms, corrupt HOAs were like weeds pull one out. 3 more sprouted elsewhere. Ashley's cameras captured the transformed Willowbrook Estates, where Margaret's sterile vision had demanded conformity. Our community now celebrated diversity. The Nuon's garden burst with Vietnamese herbs and vegetables. The new community center hosted quinceañeras, bar mitzvahs, and Eid celebrations. Veterans met monthly for barbecues that had become legendary for their smoked brisket and war stories. The biggest change, I told Ashley as we walked past the memorial garden planted where Margaret's office used to be, is that people pay attention now. HOA meetings that used to have 3 attendees now pack the room. Everyone knows what happens when good people stay passive. Emma, now 13 and taller than some of her teachers, had become an activist in her own right. She'd started a YouTube channel called HOA Watch Teens, where she taught other kids about their rights and how to spot discrimination. Her most popular video, What to Do When Your HOA Targets Your Family, had 3 million views. Dad taught me that bullies hate cameras and microphones. Emma explained to Ashley's documentary crew. So we make sure every HOA meeting is recorded and streamed. Transparency is like sunlight, it kills corruption bacteria. The ripple effects of Willowbrook had spread far beyond our gates. Dr. Sarah Winters, the algorithm designer who'd blown the whistle, had emerged from hiding to testify in dozens of cases. She now worked with HUD developing AI systems to detect discriminatory patterns in housing. Her redemption arc was compelling. Though she still received death threats from Paramount sympathizers, Tom Bradley had served 18 months in minimum security and emerged a changed man. He now traveled the country speaking to HOA boards about ethical governance. His presentation, How I Became a Monster in a Polo Shirt, was required viewing in many states' HOA certification programs. But not everyone had learned the right lessons. They're getting smarter. Agent Chen warned during our annual check-in. She'd been promoted to heading the FBI's new HOA fraud division. Yes, that was actually a thing now. Instead of Paramount's overt discrimination, we're seeing subtle pattern harassment. Death by 1,000 paper cuts instead of one big swing. She showed me files from ongoing investigations. HOAs requiring architectural approvals for doorbell cameras but only in certain neighborhoods. Noise ordinances enforced exclusively during cultural celebrations. Pool hours mysteriously changing whenever certain families tried to use facilities. It's like playing whack-a-mole. Chen continued, but at least now we have hammers. The Jennifer Martinez case in Phoenix proved the evolution of tactics. Her HOA wasn't citing her for running a business that was too obvious now. Instead, they claimed her patients' wheelchairs were damaging the sidewalks. When she proved otherwise, they pivoted to parking violations for her patients' cars. When she beat that, they tried architectural violations for her wheelchair ramp. They're hoping I'll give up. Jennifer told me over Zoom. Hier Exhaustion evident. They know I can win each fight, but they're betting I can't afford to fight forever. I connected her with our network pro bono lawyers, media contacts, and most importantly, other Phoenix homeowners who'd been similarly targeted. Within a month, they discovered their HOA board was taking kickbacks from a developer who wanted to convert their neighborhood into luxury condos. The FBI raid made the evening news. Ashley's follow-up documentary captured these ongoing battles, but also moments of hope. The annual Willowbrook Freedom Festival, celebrating the community's diversity and resilience. Margaret's former house, now owned by a black veteran named Marcus, who'd installed the biggest, most beautiful American flag in the neighborhood, completely up to code. Naturally, the documentary's climax came from an unexpected source. Margaret Sinclair, serving year 5 of her sentence, had agreed to an interview. Orange wasn't her color, and federal prison had worn away her Botox and bleach job, revealing someone who looked far older than her 67 years. The documentary ended with footage from that morning, me raising the flag at sunrise, as I'd done every day for 5 years. The flag Margaret had tried to ban, the flag that started a revolution, because sometimes the smallest acts of defiance spark the biggest changes, and sometimes a Marine's refusal to let a bully take down his colors can bring down an empire. As I watched the flag wave in the morning breeze, my phone buzzed with another message from a homeowner facing HOA harassment. I smiled, knowing that each call meant another family refusing to be silenced. Margaret Sinclair had created a monster, just not the one she'd intended. The revolution continues, one flag at a time.